we still waiting? Is it good? Ready to go? Sorry, looked wrong. Yeah. All right, kia ora tātou. Would like to say welcome, first of all, to our guests in the chamber today, to people watching us online, media who aren't here at the moment, but I'm sure are coming in very shortly. This is our first council meeting of the year, so welcome along, and to staff and councillors. And we'll kick straight into it with any apologies or declarations of interest. Councillors? Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Sure. Just declaring the interest in item 9.1. I won't vote on that matter.
Okay, so no worries. And if there's nothing else, we'll move ahead into public forum. So we have 3 people registered for the public forum today. And first up, we have Simon Lehman. So Simon, if you pop up to the bench here, welcome. And Franz might help you with the microphone. Thank you, Franz. Welcome, and we've got 5 minutes up our sleeve, Simon, and the floor is yours.
I have a copy of any of the information I'm presenting today here for anyone that chooses to be involved. I've mailed all the councillors background details regarding the operation of the Oamaru Airport. I was heartened to receive several responses, including from our mayor, so thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity to present today. As a summary, it would appear the airport spends around $7.40 for every aircraft movement and charges $1. And the asset is deteriorating considerably. The runways are worn out. One's shut for 3 months at the moment, and the second one should be shut. The council commissioned a strategic plan of the airport at considerable expense, around $90,000, which was released in 2023. The identified reason for the strategic plan was the council was concerned that ratepayers were going to have to fund a deficit. The report wasn't, or the strategic plan that was produced wasn't really rocket science. It suggested that there was a need for Waitaki District Council to address the financial management of the airport, hardly $90,000 worth. The next year, the airport lost $113,000. The following year, the deficit was $130,000. Under the Official Information Act, I asked for information for the year ending 2025, which must be readily available. Council advised me, and I quote, "They could not provide me with a decision on whether or not to release the information in the 20-day statutory time frame." Why has the council not addressed the financial performance of the airport? There are now around 85,000 movements at the airport annually. A fair to conservative charge for landing at Oamaru Airport would be around $14, including GST, which is the current listed landing fee and very reasonable. If the listed landing fee is $14, why is the average fee charged $1? More importantly, how could this not have been addressed in the last 3 years? I certainly believe non-profit making community organisations like the North Taka Aero Club should not be charged landing fees, but surely commercial operators should pay fully for the use of our facility. Or does the council think it should subsidise some private businesses? Councillors, I believe every one of you makes personal decisions to be represented on council with your heart in the right place for the good of our wonderful district. That is not in contention. But the Waitaki District Council is a big business. I think it turns over around $80 million. I don't believe any of you have the historic skills or experience to run an $80 million business. The same applies to most councils in New Zealand. And running a council business should not be a game of manoeuvring and trading and manipulating the truth, even though the culture here appears that way.
I'll just pull you up on that. If we can keep it to the topics would be really good, because I think our culture is not up for question. It'd be really good if we can just keep to the topic, because I think it means everyone remains open to what you're saying.
Thank you, Madam
Thank
Mayor.
you.
The refusal to release the 2025 performance of the airport to me in the required time frame, is that relevant, Madam Mayor? That's appalling. Running this business is not a game. If this had happened in private industry, a head would roll. A risk management meeting was called last year at the request of the council using consultancy firm AvSafe. The conclusion of all present was that the council seek an external manager to operate the airport. After years of bungling, all present wanted to get council's involvement with the airport at arm's length, and that was everyone present at the meeting. Despite this, council employed their own dedicated manager, and I better not say as per culture, but I estimate the cost of this appointment to be in the region of $200,000 per annum. As a group, I think it's important that all of you understand that you control this business. You should give clear directive to your CE that commercial users of the Oamaru Airport should be charged a reasonable $14 fee per movement. Why are we injecting $480,000 into the Oamaru Airport annually to keep the average cost per movement at $1? And watch the facilities deteriorate.
Yeah, Simon, we're just coming a bit short on time. Have you got anything else, any topics? Because I can respond to a couple of things.
At
But-
$14, give me 1 minute.
Yeah, okay, you're on.
Do we include the interjections in the 1 minute, or do they come out of my? No. Why are we injecting $480,000 into the airport annually? I've just said that. At $14 per movement, the airport could bank non-aviation income, which is from the lease of the farms, of $350,000 per year, and could have a modest profit after cost to maintain the infrastructure without degradation. Your officers have had several years to consider this under the leadership of the current CE. There is no reason why a decision on that shouldn't be made today. You're the board. It's your business. Show you're capable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to respond, I guess, to a couple of your things, your points, and around the financial statements, I'll follow that up because unless there's a good reason, I can probably pass that to the CE for a quick comment there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things to address in there. So the Lagoima, I think it's fair to say that you did receive notice that we weren't going to meet that within the time, and that was due to staff illness. Unfortunately, that was late in coming to you, so my apologies for that. And I've asked the team to address that because we shouldn't be late in meeting that. But you know, the team was stretched due to staff illness and wasn't able to respond within the time frame for Lagoima. I was going to say, as a general point, because some of those points seem to be directed at me, I think it's fair to say that there's been a debate in this council around the airport for considerable time and various different views around the table. From day one, I've been pushing that we should be taking much more of a commercial approach, but that's been balanced between the economic development ambitions of the council versus commercial charging. But certainly, we are addressing a lot of those issues. A lot of the issues you raised, in my view, are valid points. And that's why we've brought in a dedicated airport manager to address that business in terms of the commercial operating, the finances, and the maintenance of the asset and the infrastructure there and how that is being used.
So has your...
Sorry, I'm answering some of the points that you've raised in there. So I would say it's been a longer road than anyone would have wanted to get to this point. It's been a hard road, and there's been a lot of debates around the previous council table about what was the best route to take on that. But I'd say, the last council and myself have been diligently working through a path on this, and some of this is due to contractual commitments that have been made in the past, which were really around ensuring economic growth within the district, which now need to be worked through with users of the airport.
And it's fair to say, I guess, that a number of councillors share concerns around the affordability and how much we're able to invest into the airport. And there is things happening, contract negotiations and things that obviously have to happen in a commercially sensitive space. But we are hearing what you're saying and we share your concerns. So it is a body of work that's happening. Councillor Hopkins. Councillor Hopkins.
Yes, I would just make the point, given that Mr. Lamming chooses to denigrate our skills and experience.
Councillor Hopkins, no, Councillor Hopkins, I'll pull you in there. We don't need to attack people.
Well, sorry.
No, Councillor Hopkins, we will not
I'm moving
go
on.
to a personal attack. We will
Not a
stick-
personal attack,
we
it's
will
a
stick-
comment, it's a comment
I'll
about.
ask you to be quiet if you can't stick away from the personal attacks. We are very much.
Point of
focused-
order, I resent the fact that you have described that as a personal attack.
Point
have
of order
comment-
is not been accepted,
making
and
a
I'm
point of
going to
order.
ask you to turn your mic off. We'll move on. I don't think this is.
Well, I'll carry on.
No, excuse
We-
me, we'll stop that there because I don't think it's I don't think it's a positive discussion, and I think we can have that later. I don't agree with us attacking our guests personally, so we'll leave that there.
Right, we will, fine.
So, I'm closing down because we're out of time in that session, councillor Hopkins.
I wish to ask,
So,
I wish to ask a
Councillor
question.
Hopkins, I've said no, we're out of time in that session. So please listen to the chair. Thank you. Thank you very much, Simon, for your time. Appreciate it. And we'll be in touch with those other bits of information.
Thank you, Mayor, but I would make the passing comment that I've listened to explanations like this since 2013, 2019, 2023, 2025. The facts are here. They're very clear. I see no reason at all why there shouldn't be a vote on this today. Thank
It
you.
won't be voted on today because it's
I
not on the
know that.
agenda, but appreciate it. Thank you. All right, so now we will move on to Hayden Williams, who is here on behalf of the North Otago Aero Club. Welcome, Hayden. You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for having me, councillors. This is certainly not my wheelhouse, but I'll do my best and try and stay within my time frame. This is a plea for help on behalf of the Oamaru Airfield. I've never done this before, but I think it's time that I did say something. Good morning, councillors. My name is Hayden Williams. I am the president of the North Otago Aero Club. I was born into a family of pilots and have been involved in aviation my entire life and been a pilot myself for over 20 years. I've been a member of the North Otago Aero Club since 2009, and since then I've moved through the roles to president. Oamaru has a long and fond history in all of Otago, and we've been on the airfield since 1955. We currently have over 60 members. We run our club as a non-profit organisation to allow cost-effective prices for people in our community to have access to aviation. We have trained a great many people who have gone on successful aviation careers, and just in the last month, our last instructor did her first landing in an A320 airliner. In the last few years, traffic on and above the Oamaru Airfield has increased, unchecked, to a level that has every other aviation training school in the South Island preventing their students from coming to Oamaru. And most qualified pilots avoiding the airspace for a fuel stop and instead choosing Timaru or Amarama. We have pilots in our own club who have spent tens of thousands of dollars on their pilot's license that don't fly anymore due to the congestion either in the air or waiting on the ground to take off. The simple task of taxiing an aircraft to the fuel pump or even pulling planes out of the hangar can't be done without asking others to shift their aircraft to a better location for parking, of which there is plenty. In 1951, the airport was constructed, and in 1960, Spans had a DC-3 carrying freight and passengers to and from Oamaru. There have been active flights on that airfield, excuse me, operating in and out Oamaru Airfield, I think until around 2011 was the last flight from a Queen Air. In In all those years of movements, there's no record that I could find of the death of a pilot or a serious crash of an aircraft. Yet, the Oamaru Airfield is built over a riverbed. The soil varies in depth from 1 foot to 1 inch. I know this because the last 15 years I've been mowing it. I know the airport like the back of my hand. There has always been a patch of stones about 3 meters in diameter at the start of runway 02. Our instructor at the time would always be going crook at someone for taxiing through it and denting the propeller. Most of these stones were no bigger than a $2 coin. Today, the stones and rocks are far more prominent, larger, and visible over a much larger area. This is due to the high number of movements across the aerodrome. In the olden days, aeroplanes had a tail wheel which gave higher clearance to propeller from the ground. Today, 95% of the aircraft that operate off Oamaru have a nose wheel, which means the clearance is about 300 mil when the plane is static. When the aircraft is in motion, that tyre compresses and the nose oleo compresses further, which gives you clearance of about this. The tip of that propeller is doing more than Mach 1 when it goes past the ground. And so most propellers are made out of aluminium, or in today's aircraft, a composite material. Our aircraft at the Air Club has one of each. I have spoken to several engineers about what happens when a composite prop collects a rock, and the look and the shudder on their face gave me the answer that I know I never want to be in an aircraft when I go full power on takeoff with a composite prop and that prop disintegrates, because that was the answer. The props don't crack, they disintegrate, and not until they get to full power. This is something that has happened in the past, but not on our airfield. Accountability seems to be a word slowly disappearing from our society in all corners. Who is ultimately accountable for the current condition of the Oamaru Airport? Is it the users, or is it the people who give the users free rein? 15th of January 2001, a 52-year-old pilot with almost 10,000 hours flying was slinging loads of dirt at Mount Victoria in Wellington. Just stay with me, I know this goes off away from our airport a wee bit. 3 men were under the chopper, hooking and unhooking the skip from the 60-foot long line. When the second load was dropping off, when the pilot came with the second load, the people on the ground noticed spots of oil were on their face. And they thought it strange, but they unhooked the chopper. And when he came back for the third load, the same thing happened. Again, they were getting oil on their face. Now, the chopper was taking about 15 minutes between loads to fly away, have the skip filled up, and then fly it back. When it came back on the fourth load, the same thing happened. The 3 men on the ground, spots of oil on the face below the chopper. When the chopper came back for the 5th load, as it approached, the chopper appeared to lose control, and for the safety of the people on the ground, jettisoned its load and then flew into the side of the hill and killed the pilot. The investigation found that the helicopter had run out of hydraulic oil and rendered the helicopter uncontrollable. The men under the chopper didn't tell the pilot because that wasn't their job. Their job was to hook and unhook the skip. But one phone call, one radio call, one wave down could have saved that pilot. So what's the solution? Oh, sorry, there's a bit there at the bottom. So for me, in my mind, everyone here has oil on their face and our helicopter is still in the air, including me. So this is my radio call. What can be done to protect the users of Oamaru Airport? Safety of the public facility must be number one. These are big ideas, but for me, it's the only solution I can see. Tar sealing the taxiways between all runways, refueling facilities and hangars to prevent stones damaging aircraft, and restricting the number of daily movements to prevent wear on grass runways. I do not know the appropriate number of movements the runways can sustain, but it is obvious the current number is too high. Predictability. For operators with a high number of daily movements, allocated time slots for local traffic, that's traffic that stays within a 10-mile radius of the airfield, to spread the daily volume would be a huge help for other operators of the public facility. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate that. Councillors, just knowing we are running short on time, but I am going to welcome questions, but I just want to remind you we don't debate with members of the public. we just ask them questions at this stage, and any debates happen between us. Councillor Deputy Ryan.
Thank you. Thanks Hayden as well for coming in. The airport has the health and safety committee, which I'm assuming the Aero Club is involved in. So I'm just wondering, I guess, what other channels, have you raised these concerns at that level? Like, is there a concern that they haven't been addressed, or like what sort of steps, I guess, have you taken up until this point?
I guess from me, I actually started the user group, and I used to go to the groups, but they become pretty toxic, so I don't really go well in toxic environments, so I left. Early representatives from the council probably didn't have the skill set to manage the problem, and I did voice it several times, and it just wasn't the right person to talk to. And it was obvious, even though it was well received, it was obvious it wasn't going to go through. I spent a good bit of time with Sven, Councillor Thowning, in rooms down here with council members, helping them rewrite documents and bits and pieces. And yeah, it was a bit of a hair scramble early on. And I've sort of pulled myself back from that scene just so I can focus on my own life. And because I fly for fun, I'm not a commercial pilot. So it took the fun out of flying. So I brought that back by removing myself. I've since met Matt. We've had a good yarn. I've been very open and honest in my 2 times I've talked to Matt. And then this.
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, just following up on that, I think you mentioned the point about having time allocations or some negotiated arrangement where there was an agreed period where users other than the predominant user might be able to take off and land. Have you engaged with NZAA on that matter?
No, I won't. I haven't engaged with other users at all about any of these ideas. I'm certainly experienced, but I wouldn't say I was a qualified airport operator in order to make that call. These are just ideas. But I think when I go to the doctor or the hairdresser, or I book my car in for a warrant, or the mechanic or a restaurant, we all have time slots. We all have to fit in when there's congestion.
And I'll just respond to that. That is a discussion that's currently happening, and it's probably not for the Aero Club to be contacting directly other users. It's probably through the airport manager, and I know those conversations are happening.
Well, I thought, yes, exactly.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Tom.
All right. And next up, we do have Andrew Dunn on behalf of Grey Power North Otago. I'll get France to help you with the mic again there. Welcome, and we've got
That's
5
cool.
minutes. Thank you for joining us. Floor is
Thank you, Mayor Mel, and kia ora koutou, councillors. My name is Andrew Dunn. I'm the president of Grey Power North Otago. And I'm here today to outline a simple, practical proposal to establish a seniors advisory council for the district, and hopefully through you. So I've begun sounding out interest in kindred organisations, Age Concern, other senior related groups, including Ali McIntyre with positive ageing and the stronger Waitaki. But my presence here is because you're an integral part of this. There are 5,500 seniors over 65 in this district. Think of it as 5,500 votes, for want of a better word, okay? So I'm looking to see where council might fit with this particular thing here. So we have a very high proportion of older residents, apparently, in this district. And many hold a deep knowledge about how this place works, what hasn't worked, a kite of knowledge, if you like, a knowledge basket for this council. So I know that this council ensures that all older residents have a meaningful voice in the country, in this district's future. And I'm conscious recently that issues that have come up, whether they be the parking meters or anything, different groups have their own people calling up and saying, what do we do? How do we do it? And that might be an example of how a council might more formally look to that and focus their interest. So why of all this? Well, we've just covered that a wee bit. So the purpose of a council is to use our older person's insight. So we remember now that grey power is about the little grey cells, not so much the grey hair. So there's lots of experience that I'm sure we could do with. So it's providing advice to you on issues that affect older residents. There is an age-friendly planning aligned with the Minister of Senior Citizens, who is promoting this nationwide. And the alignment for age-friendly Aotearoa and the WHO age-friendly city principles, which are outlined, and I have copies of terms of reference that you might want to look at, which can be a channel for feedback. So the question is where to put this with you. So, Mayor Mel, I'll be looking to consult with you and to take advice from you as to, I've been looking at your committees online, and the only one I can come across is the Performance, Audit and Risk Committee, in terms of giving us a home within accountability or response through the council to look to that. So part of this group, what are we doing? We're looking to get representatives from groups within in the district, but including the council as well, hopefully. If a councillor could find time or has a specific interest, I'd welcome that to come along. So looking at individuals to make this thing work. So I'm just exploring at the moment and coming here to see what you can do with that, but to get a formal mechanism to support you in supporting us. Thank you.
Right, first up, councillors, do we have any questions? So, and obviously we've met as well, and we've been emailing a bit of correspondence. So I will be back in touch with some thoughts we might have and how you can go about things. It's a conversation we're starting to have around the table here, and it is early days, so don't want to overpromise, but there's certainly a willingness to go, you know, is there a different way we can do this? And I think the idea of having some kind of advisory group or committee, or however we look at it, there's a lot of ways we can do it, and there's some councils across the country that are doing this really well. So I think we need to spend a bit of time on it at our end to see what we think might be an appropriate way that we can work into our systems to make it meaningful. But yeah, we'll keep in touch with you, but thank you very much for your
Absolutely.
input.
Oh.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, one small question. Thank you very much for the proposal. Will it be your view that it should be just you, or perhaps other entities like Age Concern as well?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, right.
You know, we'll keep in touch, and we'll find an avenue there, because I think that it's a conversation certainly worth having.
Great.
So
Thank you,
for your
ma'am.
time.
Thank you all.
All right, councillors, so now we will move forward onto the confirmation of public minutes. Is there any questions or comments on those minutes? No, do I have anyone that is willing to move? Moved Councillor Cowles, seconded Councillor Fanini Tahiti. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? That's carried. And so now we will move on to my mayoral report. And when I'm finished scrolling, there was a better way I could do this. Okay, so there is obviously a lot going on at council, and we thought that it was a really good time just to keep the mayoral report going, because I think in the future for local government sort of space and everything that's happening in our reform space, it's really important that we just let people know what we're doing. It is early days, so you'll see in this agenda, we're going to be talking around some of our submissions to some of the work that's happening, so that we're giving our perspective. At the moment, I guess a lot of our conversations are very much in the preparing ourselves to be well positioned for these conversations. So it's meeting with different ministers and MPs. It's continuing our work with the Canterbury Mural Forums and the Otago Mural Forums, recognising that this regional conversation for us is still happening both north and south. And we're keen to keep that conversation both north and south at the moment, so that we can actually work on what some good solutions, or what good local government looks like before we land on what the lines on the map look like. So in the meantime, I think we're in a really important space where we can actually join the conversations between Canterbury and Otago until a result falls out. And I don't want us to preempt where that lies at the moment. I'm keen for us to do a whole lot of work in, what are we, what do we do well, what should we be providing for our community at a local level, and that will feed into the CTB conversations when they stand up. But obviously this is still something that's going through. And so even things like the CTB, there's a process happening there. So we need to see where the government lands after the submissions close. Any questions? Councillor Hopkins.
Just one small one. I noticed we've had, and I'm staggered by the amount of work you've done, and thank you for it, because it's all heavy lifting and dealing with really substantial matters. A lot of engagement with parliamentarians, a long list of people you've met. The one name that jumped out at me, because it isn't there, is Amy Adams.
Oh, that's probably my bad. She's been, I guess, throughout the whole list. She's been in a number of meetings, and there
Right.
probably actually has been, obviously have missed that off my list, sorry, because there has been individual meetings between myself and her. Sometimes it's just a quick phone call to update her on how a meeting might have gone. So sometimes they're not probably in my diary, which is probably why I haven't missed it on the line, but they've certainly happened, and different times when Alex and myself have caught up with her as well, just to let her know that we are on track to make a decision when we need to, in order to get our water services delivery plan to a space where it will be ready in time to meet the legislative requirements.
Thank you.
No worries. Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Cowles.
I just probably more of a comment. I see, at the end here you've included the photo when we met with the guys from the Waitaki Valley Health Hub, and pretty excited in the last couple of weeks. Even since then, they've had $73,000 grant from the Otago South and Rescue Helicopter Trust. So that's the helicopter pad as well underway and being built up there, which is a really good starting point for them. Lots of local contractors being used in that. But on top of that, two major donations, one of $1 million, one of $500,000 from local families. This shows the support, the public support, and how important this project is to our constituents up in the Ahuriri. So, really supportive of trying to help move this forward. Amazing community input yet again. So, very proud of what they're doing.
I think you're right. It's amazing to see a community getting out there and, some real true issues that are happening up there, finding solutions and actually just going out there and doing it, and the community getting in behind. So yeah, any way we can help support that moving forward, I think is fantastic. Right. Any other questions there, councillors? No, I'll move from the chair that it is noted and information is received. Seconded, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Right, I'll put that all in favour, please say aye. And against, that's carried. All right, and now we'll move on to the reports of the Chief Executive Staff for discussion, and we're moving into the parking strategy. Welcome, Andrew. All right, so basically this is a report. We've had this come to us and it's been at my request. We were looking at moving to 15 minutes as a trial period for parking, for free parking within the CBD here in Oamaru. And I thought with taking the temperature a little bit and looking at some of the feedback we've had out in the community, that I think there has been some concern on the ability for some members of our community to pay with credit card and to just, I guess, come up to speed on the new system. And I think that it's probably way too early to be looking at moving to 15 minutes. But I also think that conversation needs to be done at the same time as a wider parking strategy conversation, which is due to come back to us later in the year. That's probably my intro from a governance perspective, but I'll pass over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's quite a lot of commentary in the paper in terms of the background and current situation going back to pre-COVID, when the previous machines were all operating well, and council, the revenue realised from the parking machines went to subsidise business rates. Since COVID, the machines have degraded very, very quickly, and the revenue decreased by 68%. After COVID, we went through a whole phase of free parking for 6 months, 2 hours free parking for a short time, and then to 1 hour free parking. That was to help with the recovery and bringing people back into the CBD. One major thing that we've noticed with the 1 hour free parking is the effect that it's had on the revenue. In that obviously people are utilising the 1 hour free parking. Since the new machines were installed in December last year, week on week, the usage has increased significantly. So per week, on average, we have 1,600 people activating the machines for the 1 hour free only, and then we have the people who are paying additional to that. So the revenue's increasing from when we first implemented the new machines. So is the uptake in terms of people utilising the 1 hour free. So we're seeing that all trending upwards, which shows that the instalment of the new machines was a good decision in terms of keeping that going. Happy to answer. I'm sure there's a lot of questions out there from the councillors. I will just make one comment that out in the public, specifically social media, there's been a lot of disinformation put out there in regards to the parking meters. A lot of disinformation which has had an effect on the enforcement officers. And what we're really looking is to get some clarity on where we're going to go from here so that we can get some certainty for our officers and also for the community.
Well understood, and that's a reasonable question. Councillors, I'll move to Councillor Lewis first of all.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm just wondering if there's any stats for people extending beyond the 1 hour free parking that they're getting at the moment. Do we have any sort of information with regards to, are they utilising the free hour and then paying for a subsequent hour or period of parking, or are those visits effectively isolated?
Thank you, councillor. You can't pay for parking until you've used your 1 hour. So anyone activating the machine, it takes into account that 1 hour. So anybody paying is paying for additional parking. You have to physically choose to pay for additional parking in order to go beyond that 1 hour. So I guess we could say everybody who's paid via app or through the tap and go on the machine has utilised that 1 hour. I hope that answers your question.
Well, yeah, kind of, because at the end of the day, if you've got a free hour, but that's, say you revisit the CBD, and that's been part of, I think, some of the contention and the misinformation and things that's been out there. People thinking that they can utilise a part of a free hour and then go back to that. Is there any sort of correlation with regards to somebody utilising it at one period and then coming back and having to pay from there? Do we have those sort of figures or those stats?
Unfortunately, no, councillor. The machines don't recognise when a vehicle leaves. We would need to physically look at people's registration numbers to see how many times they've entered that. So if we had somebody who's come into town 3 times on one day, they would effectively use their 1 hour free and then have to pay for any subsequent visits. Perhaps we would have the ability, maybe through our supplier, to look into that. I can't answer that definitively.
I'll go to Mr. Cook, and then I've got Councillor Linwood, Councillor Hopkins, and Deputy Mayor Brian.
Thank you, Mayor Tabendale. The very question that Councillor Lewis asks illustrates some of the complexity that we have created through gradual increments of this change in parking over the years, and why we actually now have misinformation, disinformation, and confusion. And now if we didn't have the free hour and everybody acted their parking meter in 15 minutes and there was no grace period and it started at 8 and finished at 6, it would be a very simple operation. It would be a very simple thing to communicate. But we don't have that, and it's where we evolve to next. And I really encourage you to make sure we don't evolve to something more complicated. Let's evolve to something more simple that can be communicated, that can be understood, that does work for the community.
Thank you. Councillor Linwood.
Thank you, and through the chair. Thanks, Andrew. I don't really know the best way to word this, but so you said before the parking subsidises business rates. So parking revenue that we would make now would directly benefit the businesses. Is that what you're saying? Like that's what previously had happened and that's what would happen going forward?
Thank you, Councillor. What I can say is that before COVID, the revenue from parking meters went towards subsidising business rates. Perhaps Mr. Hope can explain that a little bit better, but I know that during COVID, when the revenue went down, we had to take money from the reserves to go into that fund. Because of the degradation of the machines that we had, we just haven't been realising that revenue. And for the last 4 or 5 years, 4 years, we've probably really only been seeing about 20 to 25% of what we were seeing pre-COVID.
Mr. Hope.
No, that's fine. So so part of the council's rating policy in relating to parking meters is that it sits entirely in the Oamaru business rate. So if there is a surplus or a deficit, it only sits with those that pay the Oamaru business rate. It doesn't go out to any wider part of the community.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, sorry, a couple of questions. Interestingly, that May resolution from last year actually doesn't at any point identify 15 minutes as an alternative. 5 says approve the removal of 1 hour free parking after 10 a.m. Monday to Saturday for a 6-month trial period with foot traffic implications to be reviewed at that time. So my question in regard to that is that 15-minute option a kind of statutory fallback, or how did we actually come to implement that? The other question relates to the age
Councillor
concern.
Hopkins, we'll take one question.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Thank you. Mr. Bardsley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to do one at a time. Okay. Yes, so within our bylaw, it used to be 10 minutes to activate the parking machine. And with the resolutions that were put to council, seeing that we were going to move to removing the 1 hour free parking for a 6-month trial, a decision at that council, a later council meeting when we changed the bylaw to reflect the change in the machines, we increased it to 15 minutes. And the 15 minutes is designed to allow people to pull into a park, organise themselves on whether they need to get the app ready, Pama Park app, top it up, unload the car, find a parking meter. That's what that 15 minutes is designed for. A lot of councils just have you must immediately activate the machine, or they give you a 5 or 10 minutes, and we moved it out to 15 minutes. It wasn't put into the bylaw as a free parking period.
Thanks, Andrew. My second question relates to the first paragraph of the age concern letter. We've been told that there's high anxiety in the senior community, fear of receiving a $70 parking ticket, some are not going into town. And then it goes on to say there have been instances where people have received a ticket less than 15 minutes after they parked, even though the council has been promoting a 15-minute grace period. Is that correct? And if so, how many people have received a ticket and for what amount?
Thank you, councillor. As you may recall, in 2023, the government raised the infringement fees for parking, and they went to $70 across the board for failing. Before the new machines came in, it was failing to display your parking ticket that you had to get out of the machine. And this is carried on to failing to activate the machine. So it's $70. Since the implementation of the machines on the 5th of December, we've had 55 infringements issued for failing to activate the parking machine, which obviously equates to maybe 5 per week. There will be instances, and there have been instances, where people have vacated their vehicles and within that 15 minutes have been issued an infringement. It's because it's not a you have 15 minutes to go and do your shopping and then come back. The only way we know that people have actually occupied a park and have activated the machine is by when the enforcement officer goes out, they enter the registration number into their device and it shows whether the machine's been activated. So at that point, we don't know whether they've been there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 or an hour. So yes, there have been instances, and we've had some appeals that have come in from people who claim that they had been there for less than 15 minutes. And on a lot of instances, we've actually accepted their appeal and waived the infringement. For the first 2 weeks of the machines being implemented, we waived all infringements because we wanted to just get people used to using the machines.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins, did you have any further questions?
No, I just cite a phone call I had from somebody who just said, I refuse to pay, you know, I'm not going to be followed by the government. So there are people who are making kind of political sovereign citizen type choices with regard to this as well.
Can I just make a comment in regards to the age concern letter? The misinformation that's gone out there on a certain local social media page has caused a lot of concern for some of our older members of the public. And I'll give you an example. Last week, I was walking through the foyer and there was an elderly couple there waiting in line and they looked very agitated. I took it upon myself to go and ask, could I help them? They'd come in to complain about the new parking meters. I asked them what their concern was and they said, how on earth were they expected to use them? They didn't know how to use them. So I took them out to one of the machines and asked them, have you actually used it or tried to use it? And their answer was no. So some people are actually concerned and commenting about the parking machines and they haven't even given them a go. I went through it with both the gentleman and his wife. They were both in their late 80s. They were able to then use the machine. I spent the next 15 minutes talking about their life in Oamaru and how they met and everything. So it was a great conversation. But what we're finding out there is our officers are walking up the street and anybody we see at the machine that seems to be having difficulty, we stop and ask them, do you need some help? Can I help you? And a lot of these people that we're helping are people from our older generation. And once we take them through it, they comment on how easy it is and how simple it is. At our drop-in sessions at the library before we implemented the new machines, the majority of people that came in were people, in their 70s and 80s. And a lot of their comments were, I don't know what all the fuss is about. The machines are quite easy to use.
Right.
So I totally accept that this is valid, but it's not a true representation, I don't think.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. We've just got quite a line of questions or speakers. I'm going to start with Mr. Cook, then Deputy Mayor Ryan, then Councillor McCone, Councillor Holden, Councillor Downing and Councillor Linwood. So I'll throw it to you, Mr. Cook.
Thank you. I wouldn't want councillors to underestimate the level of abuse that officers have received over this. It has been quite significant, particularly to the officers that have been out in the town centre. It's ranged from some quite awful written abuse on social media, verbal abuse from people driving down the street, verbal abuse in the street, verbal abuse of those officers when they're making their way home, verbal abuse at social engagements. So today I would encourage you to look at all the options And if you are sitting here of the belief that you may not wish to make a change, please don't send us out to consult. Go with option 4, because I don't imagine that you are going to get much different to what you've already had. Do you want to lose the free parking? I don't imagine you're going to get many people say, yes, I want to lose the free parking. I don't imagine you're going to get many people feedback and say, yes, expand the areas. And it takes a toll on the officers doing that work. If actually deep down you don't want to expand the areas and generate revenue through parking, we're quite happy to go with the status quo.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Absolutely understand where you're coming from on that, and we certainly want to support officers. If we're asking them to do something that has been set by council, then they should be safe in being able to carry out their job. So support you in that wish. Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Thank you. 2 questions. The first, reading through this and sort of all of the discussion that there has been recently has prompted me to reflect back on other discussions that we have had in the past. Can someone through the chair remind me where we landed with that previous resolution instructing officers to investigate a parking card that can be topped up at council facilities, just to address some of those concerns around like the cashless paying methods?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, we investigated that, and unfortunately, you need a card that's capable of being used under the WinCave system, so that's your typical contactless. You're not able, council's not able to provide a card that you can top up unless it is contactless. We've investigated the use of Prezi cards. Unfortunately, Prezi cards also need to be swiped, and there needs to be a PIN used with them. So we're reliant on that WinCave system, which is contactless, and we got to a point where that wasn't going to work to have a top-up card that council would be responsible for doing with members of the public.
Thank you. And just second question prompted by Mr. Cook's comments there around consultation. Yeah, I mean, I guess from my perspective, like there is a role that the community has, but probably when a lot of the discussion is around the CBD and economic, the economic impact for our businesses, is there a way that we could consult or hear those views coming through beyond just the public's views? Or sorry, I'm not sure what that looks like, but yeah, there's a lot of discussion about the impact on the CBD, but I'm not hearing that, I guess, directly from the businesses. So would there be a way to do a consultation in that way?
We can consult on anything with anyone that we want through a formal process or an informal process through our Let's Talk page. But yeah, I mean, we're seeing new businesses open up in the CBD, and a couple of business owners I know, the parking machine debacle has actually increased their business because people are coming in and asking them about the machines because there's one right outside the shop. So I'm actually thinking about charging them. But yeah, we can consult with whoever and in any way that we need to, but we just need to be sure about what it is that we're actually looking to achieve out of that consultation.
Thank you. So we'll go on to Mr. Cook, and then Councillors McCone, Holding, Thelning, Linwood, then Cowes. And if anyone wants to drop out of that list, then as well.
I would just try and keep this brief. One idea that Andrew and I have started discussing, and we have actually mentioned it with one high street retailer, that whether the retailers could use this as a way to generate foot traffic. So we don't mind who activates the app or who activates the meter. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that a shop owner, in wanting to generate foot traffic, could actually be prepared to activate the app on their phone and take the $2 off the person and put it in their till. It's not beyond the possibility that major retailers could actually say, well, if you spend X amount of dollars with us, we'll cover your parking. So it actually uses as a methodology to get people into the shop. And would solve the cash issue where people want to use cash.
Councillor McCone.
Yeah, a couple of questions. So Andrew, you said $70 was put down by the government. Is that the top of the market? Is that negotiable, that fee, that fine to start with? Can we bring that down ourselves, or is that a direction from government? The first part of the question.
Thank you, councillor. It's actually legislated.
Okay.
It sits in the schedule. So we can't change that amount. We obviously, if someone appeals, we look at the reasons around how it occurred, and if they've got valid reasons, we're always happy to accommodate them. But that's a fixed fee, unfortunately.
So the rest is more or less a statement. We're talking about $2 an hour, which is
But we're still in questions. We really
Okay.
don't have time.
Is there then any looking at making it extending the parking to other parts, or we keep it where it is, bearing in mind that we've got to keep it simple?
I don't think officers need to answer that. I think that's the direction they're looking for from us today. Councillor Holden.
Councillor Ryan sort of asked my questions, but I think more so that rather than consulting on the east to west, now to be education and data gathering piece on for that thing. I mean, believe it or not, people don't have cell phones, which surprised me. But so somehow we are going to try and get that data and address those gaps. I don't know how we do it. But yeah, my question was just about the resolution with the cash payments as well. But at the end of the day, it's I know I'll get questions.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Fallon.
So can I, through Madam Chair, can I just?
Not at this stage. I don't think there's any questions there, so we'll just.
Could we, first of all, the website's massively improved with the amount of information on there, and I think that'll go some way to fixing the disinformation issue. Could we add a few more bits? Perhaps one thing was the parking permits as a cash option. That could be a bit clearer, perhaps. And then the basic reasons would we have paid parking as well, because there's this idea out there you could do P60s, 120s, and that, and I thought, yeah, that sounds pretty good, but there is reasons when I looked into it why the meters are there. So perhaps if that was on the website as a clear way, or to help people understand right from the start why it's being done.
Yeah, obviously, as we move through, we're coming across different things that we didn't sort of plan for, and that's why we're updating the website. And of course, yeah, we could explain why we have paid parking. I'll just say in regards to cash, it costs us over $1,000 a month if we have coins in the machines, because they have to go to Dunedin to be processed, because none of the banks here will take coins. So they have to go to Dunedin. So that's another cost that we have to factor in regards to having cash payment.
Councillor Linwood.
Thank you, and through the chair. Just following on from what Deputy Mayor Ryan was saying, given that a significant proportion of our community obviously still don't use contactless payments, I'd just like to know what provisions we're doing to ensure that everyone does have access to using the parking meters. Like, can we do anything on our end to make it a bit easier for them in terms of paying for parking if they don't use contactless? I know you said that we can't really do it, but I'm sure there must be something we can do to make sure everyone can use them.
Thank you. And through the chair, I've had quite a few questions along this vein, and people need to remember we still have free parking in Oamaru. Behind the art gallery, there's a car park there which is free. There's the car park down by where the farmers market is. Free parking on Itchin Street. Along on the other side of the hospital, we have time restricted parking. So there are other options for people who aren't able to. We have encouraged a number of people who didn't have contactless or paywave cards they said that they would go to their bank, and their bank's quite happy to give them a card which has paywave on it. But we understand that not everybody wants to do that, doesn't feel comfortable, they don't feel safe in the way that you pay for things now. So we provide information on where they can park without having to pay for it. Plus, we also have the 1 hour free. And the
Right.
majority of people who come into the CBD aren't going to be here for more than an hour, so they don't have to pay.
Right now, I've got councillor Cowles, Hopkins, Holding, then Schlack, and then that will be all our questions we're taking, and we're going to have to get something on the table. So councillor Cowles.
Sorry, I was actually looking to move something, so
Okay, I'll
I'm
come back to
prepared
you
to
then,
wait.
councillor Cowles. Councillor Hopkins.
Me too. I was going to ask if you'd entertain a recommendation.
That's all right. Councillor Holding.
That's right. Remember, moving forward, whichever direction go, where the business rate was getting supplemented, are we ring fencing it, the revenue now? We're strictly is there a change there in the policy?
Just a quick look to my left to Mr. Hope with a shake of the head, I'd say no.
Thank you. Councillor Schlack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a question for Mr. Hope, if I don't mind, and it's purely just to clarify my understanding of how it actually works. So you stated that the revenue from parking meters subsidises the Oamaru business rates. Just want to know then, do the Oamaru business rates pay for the actual maintenance of the parking facilities, including the meters, or does that come out of the general rates?
And so it's the whole parking function sits inside the Oamaru business rate funding basket. So yes, the costs of meter maintenance and everything else is funded through that mechanism.
All right, I'll move to councillor Cowles.
Yeah, look, thank you. I was just looking at moving option one and bearing in mind that, you know, it seems like there's a number of things here to still be addressed overall. And I think looking at it as a strategic way forward and for us to discuss it all, and I'd like to sort of speak to that further if I found a second. Thank you.
Clarification.
Seconded councillor Lewis. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we've got the actual recommendations are at the start of the agenda item, and I had intended to move those recommendations, which I think reflect option one, with one very slight change. The idea of moving an option doesn't sit with the actual process of voting on a matter like this. So can I suggest we adopt the recommendation rather than one or other of the options?
Councillor Cowles, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, look, I'm happy with the recommendation reflects option one, I believe, in my mind, but it was.
Councillor Lewis, sorry, Councillor Lewis, are you happy with that change to the recommendation?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Back to you, councillor Hopkins.
Can
Can you put your mic on, please?
Oh, sorry, I did foreshadow one small change, which I don't think is contentious. It reflects the May resolution that council rescind resolution WDC 2025-069 from May 25 to remove 1 hour free parking for a 6-month trial period, until council confirms a parking strategy later in 2026.
So councillor Cowles.
Yeah, look, I don't think putting that 6 months with the workload we have in front of us, where this is going to land, I don't think that's fair to put that on the team. Right now, I know that we're addressing it and it's something we need to move forward. I understand that, but we're now rescinding that.
So councillor Cowles, the move is not comfortable. Were you wanting to move an amendment?
Well, I propose there's other people who can read this time.
Just wondering for an amendment or whether you're willing to change. And number 2, I was wanting to also flag as part of the consultation around the additional paid parking and 1 hour free parking, which just taking the officer's viewpoint too, that perhaps another lot of consultation is not what we want to do. But I wanted to flag that free parking for over 80-year-olds should be part of our conversations. Whether consultation is needed, I probably want to put a question mark beside your resolution to just pass back to you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to word something along those lines.
So if we really, if we move to, if you're welcome or open to suggestions, if we move to direct officers to, rather than combine consultation, to feed into the parking strategy, additional paid parking areas, or options around additional paid parking in areas, 1 hour free parking and free parking for 80-year-olds. So that comes to us as a strategy, but we're not requiring them to go out and consult again, recognising that there's a lot of cost in that. Did you want to?
I'm just clarifying, are you moving an amendment?
I'm just asking if the mover is welcome, open to changes.
I would be happy with that wording, or those. Yeah, it is an amendment to the recommendation, I guess, but yeah, I would be happy to, probably remove that consultation area. And part of me speaking to that as well is in what I'd like to speak to. So.
I'm just being advised I'm best to move it as an amendment for clarity. So I will move that as an amendment, and I'll just pass to the government. Thank
So
you,
just for clarity, the mover and seconder moved the recommendations in there. What's being suggested is an amendment to the recommendations. So I think just for absolute clarity, I think we need to move that as an amendment, and so need a mover, which I presume is yourself,
So
Madam Mayor, and a seconder.
I'll move the recommendation, and I'm just wondering if the governance advisor was able to capture my words or not.
Look, I'm just putting.
Thank you.
That council. So what I've got on screen, sorry if it's a little difficult to read there, that council rescinds resolution from May 2025 to remove 1 hour free parking until council confirms a parking strategy later in 2026, and directs officers to feed into the parking strategy additional paid parking areas and options on additional, okay. Additional paid parking areas and 1 hour free parking and free parking for over 80-year-olds.
Okay, so I'm moving that amendment, seconded by Deputy Mayor Ryan. It just keeps it clear. So first of all, we'll vote on the amendment if there's any, unless there's any questions.
Debate.
All right. Any debate on those, on that, just the amendment at this stage? Councillor Holden.
Part of that, will that be coming back to us with the updated financial and the data that we can gather in those next 6 months to get a bigger picture? Sorry.
I'll bring back to you as much as I can gather, which will be a lot.
Thank you. Councillor Thowling, did you have a question or comment?
Or you're just an observation as part of the debate that would solve that cash issue. So I'll be.
Might be a part of the wider debate rather than just the amendment. Is that?
Well, the 80-year-old part would solve it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. It's clear now.
Okay, well, I will put that. All in favour, please say aye. And against? That's carried, so that becomes a substantive motion now. Is there any questions on that motion, recognising that we've asked lots of questions already?
So now voting on 1 and 2.
Yeah. The 1 and 2, but the 2 has been amended. All right, so any debate at this stage? Question, Mr. Cook.
I'll just ask a couple of questions just to clarify that the need for consultation is removed. And if we wanted to workshop any of this, we would do it with the Oamaru subcommittee first or council?
I think the Oamaru subcommittee is where it fits really nicely for us to tease out the detail, for us to come to council with a strategy to discuss. Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Sorry, I just have an additional question. So we are not going to consult on any of these options. And then I guess if that's the case, I know there has been some pre-consultation with businesses around additional paid areas. Have you collected enough information from that?
Yeah, the businesses around the affected areas where we've identified additional parking, we engaged with them, we got very limited feedback from them. Would you like to know what the feedback was?
No, but
Okay.
we are making a decision to not consult on anything.
So yeah, that feedback, though limited, can come back through the parking strategy conversation. And I guess in the interim, if there is things that the councillor is wanting a bit more clarity on, that might be done through the Oamaru committee. Any other questions, councillors? Or comments or debate at this stage? Right, I'll put that. So just making sure we're clear on what we're voting on. Yeah, we'll share that one more time. Okay, so it's looking at the rescinding the resolution to remove 1 hour free parking. So basically it means that the 1 hour free will stay until later in the year when the parking strategy comes before council. And also basically saying we don't need to do any more consultation in that space, and directing the officers on some of the detail that we want to make sure is included in the thinking around the parking strategy. So is everyone comfortable with what we're voting on? Right, I'll put that all in favour, please say aye. And against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, team. I know you've had a tough road on this one, so I hope that's offered some clarity in there. Right, how are we looking for time? Good. So I'm going to move now on to the Otago and Canterbury triennial agreements. And I guess just to step into this conversation, we are part of, as we discussed earlier, 2 mural forums. So both the Otago Mural Forum and the Canterbury Mural Forum, because our region covers, or our council covers 2 different regional councils, so it falls into 2. And the conversations, I think, around these groups is becoming more important rather than less important in the conversations that are happening at the national level around regional reorganisation. These triennial agreements, we have to have them approved by the 1st of March, I think it is. And so there's not really a lot of room for us to feed in if you're uncomfortable with that, because they have been sent around all the councils involved. So I think it's a bit of a setting the way we work together, but I don't think that there's a lot of risk in the way we're working together. I think what comes out of that is what we need to have more say on. So is there any questions on either of those 2 documents? Councillor McCone, you're looking like you want to ask a question.
I do, and given the current stand and where things are, how beneficial is it at the minute? Because I think that will change further down the track. So is it actually value for money, I suppose, is one way of putting it. I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
I absolutely do. I think it's absolutely value for money at the moment, and the fact that we need to be at the table in these conversations, and it'd be too early not to. I think early conversations we talked about needing to choose one or the other and to land firmly in one region. And I guess that the risk with that is then it limits the conversation to one region or the other, when I think that the outcomes could look quite different to that. So we need to remain open. And I'm going to pass on to Mr. Palmer too.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I think if you'd asked that question a few years ago, there'd have been a healthy debate on value for money. I think these agreements are becoming increasingly important. We need to be doing more together as councils, and that's the way legislation is pushing us as well. So if you think about the RMA reform, that envisages that for both Canterbury and Otago, that we will be part of joint arrangements with neighbouring councils on spatial planning. If you look at the proposals around simplifying local government, that envisages that we'll be working together with our neighbouring councils in Otago and Canterbury to plan for a better system of local government for our communities. But just in terms of the issues and challenges we face, I think it's always tempting to say, oh, we're different, we're unique compared to other councils in other areas, but there are many things that we have in common. And certainly as a council, we've been pushing that, that there's more that we should be looking to do together. And so we do share resources now, for example, in Otago, looking at waste. We do have what is emerging to be a shared agenda around how do we support the growth of business and local economies, and how do we make sure that we go with Otago to government with one single voice advocating for our needs, so that all the communities benefit in Otago from that. So I think, valid question, but these are becoming increasingly important. And I think they're more than just looking at the mayoral forum. Those are important in terms of guiding the governance, but these are essential partnership arrangements between councils now that go far beyond that. And you'll see in the Otago one a deliberate mechanism to make sure that councillors from across all those councils have an opportunity to engage in shaping that agenda, and then supported by various working groups of officers that are working together to tackle these issues and share resources and expertise on that.
Yeah, I think as well, just looking at the proposal around CTBs moving forward, the early relationship building going on now around the mayoral forums, it is with the mayors who are going to be sitting on those boards if the things stay the way they were introduced by government. So I think that relationship building right now is really important as well.
So CCB, council control boards, that was it.
What is that? I can't remember.
So yeah, with any government changes, we introduce more acronyms. So CTB is essentially the board of the mayors for each region that is currently proposed by the government to both redesign the local government system and come forward with proposals for that, but also is proposed to take over the governance of regional councils in each region. So it's a combined territory board, I think is the acronym. So let's just say it's the board of mayors designing the future and governing regional councils under the current proposal as it stands.
So we have suggestions on how they could alter that somewhat. Any other, Councillor Slack, then Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for my understanding, if you like, this is page 39, financial consideration, third paragraph, where it states the Canterbury Mayoral Forum may choose to levy council for a specific project if required, etc., etc. That is pretty broad statement. Are there limits to that?
There's limits on your voting as to what budgets you put to this. So at the moment, there is a limited one, which I think the amount paid to WDC or paid by us to the Canterbury Mayoral Forums last year was 3,196. So you can assume that there is around the figure we're talking now. If that needs to increase for a body of work, then that needs to go back to each individual council and be voted on. So it's not tying you to any more than the standard at the moment.
And to add to that, just for absolute clarity, these bodies have no decision-making authority over councils. So anything that requires a commitment of council, whether it be financial or otherwise, would need to come through each council to make a decision on whether financial or any other issue.
Yeah, I just picked up that it was a pretty broad statement there that basically there's no limit to it, but that's the way it is stated. Just wanted to clarify it.
No, fair call. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, I have to say I like the Canterbury one much more than the Otago one, if only because the Canterbury one seems to me to be more focused, more purposeful, and more concentrated on councils. I would like to see us ask a few questions of the Otago people. For instance, on page 41, I note benefits of working together, build strong relationships between councils, Kaitahu, Ki, Otago, and other partners. Well, if there are other partners, in my view, they should be itemised and indicated rather than simply one. And I'm curious to know if we ever actually saw and or ratified the separate charter for Te Raupu Taio Otago being the formal structure supporting the partnership between Kaitahu, Ki Otago and Otago's councils. I don't recall that ever coming to us, and I'm wondering if we shouldn't actually see it before we agree to it.
So I think I just wanted to pick up on this notion of going to the Otago people. We are the Otago people. This is our forum, and this is the chair of the mayoral forum, and I'm the chair of the chief executives forum. So, I think it's not other people we're going to go to. It's us. We've helped shape this, and I think we'll take that feedback back in terms of being more clear. The other partners tend to be other government agencies, but also business organisations. So historically, the mayoral forum has had historically the forum has had partners from, for example, MSD, the regional commissioner representing all public services within the region, come and talk, but also representatives from the various business organisations as well. And that changes from time to time depending on what the issues are. So, for example, in the last triennium, there were regular visitors from Health New Zealand, and from the Department of Health around the hospital build in Dunedin and its impact within the wider region. I think in terms of the Te Rūpūtau, that hasn't traditionally come to the constituent councils. That's traditionally been signed off by the mayoral forum, but certainly we can, make. I mean, it's publicly available information, but we can certainly make sure that is shared with councillors.
And I guess just to provide a little bit of context, the Canterbury Mayoral Forum has quite a number of longer existing mayors as part of it, and it's got a lot more, it's a bigger forum, so it has a lot more support sitting around it. So it's probably a lot more advanced in the way it's operating. The Otago Mayoral Forum, well, I'm a new mayor on it. We've got a number of new mayors at the table, and the ones that are existing mayors are not long serving by any stretch. So I think it's a very new forum when it comes to the people sitting at the table. So we are still working on what our program moving forward will look like and populating that. So it's early days, and it's something that we weren't going to have a whole lot more detail on this early on in the term. Councillor Lewis.
Just on that, Mayor Mel, do you feel that there's a vibe or a feeling that there's a more progressive approach with the newer mayors to move it forward in a way that possibly it wasn't in the past?
I think there's probably two things at play. One is I think that the people at the table are really keen to see how we can work together more efficiently and actually find the places where we have a bit of a combined voice on things, and recognise that we probably haven't been, probably in the Otago Mayoral Forum as much as anything, haven't been a stronger voice and utilised that group as much as we possibly could have done. And I guess the other thing being now with the discussion happening around the future for local government and what that looks like, these relationships are becoming more important. So I think we're also recognising we're stepping into a very different space. And so the conversations are moving, and they're very different to what they probably were last term. And I'd say conversations we're having now, in 6 months' time, when we've got a bit more clarity on government direction, we'll probably move into a whole different space. So it's going to be very much a space of us keeping our councils informed and involved, and finding out how we all feed into what the priorities of the Canterbury Mayoral Forum and Otago Mayoral Forum are. Right.
When we're ready, happy to move.
Yeah, so moved by Councillor Fanini Ta'iti. Do we have a seconder? Is Councillor Linwood? Any debate on that one? Yes, we can put them separately. So first of all, we'll put the Otago Local Authorities Triennial Agreement. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye. So which one are you voting for first?
Sorry, the Otago.
No.
Okay, so that's no. So that was voted against by Councillor Hopkins. Did you want Hopkins? Would you like that reported? No. Okay, so that has been passed, and then I'll put the Canterbury Territorial Agreement. All in favour, please say aye. And against? That's passed. Oh, sorry, I missed some resolutions. So we've done the Canterbury. So we've got recommendations. We've done 1 and 3 essentially, with 3 1 vote against, but 1 and 3 have passed. So I didn't move to the recommendations on that one. 2 and 4, which is around authorising myself to sign both of them, just checking with the mover and the seconder if we're comfortable to include those. Fantastic. I will put them just separately in case there was any dissent in the room. So, first of all, we'll start with number 2 there under the recommendations, which is authorise myself to sign the agreement. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And against? That's carried. And then move on to number 4. We're authorising me to sign the Otago. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And against? That's carried. Thank you. That one. Right, we have 5 minutes. I notice we do have Victoria in the room, but we have coming up next the submission on supporting local government, but I think there's a bit to work through in that space. So it might be an idea to hold that through until after lunch. And I'm guessing there's possibly also a bit of work to work through in the planning and the natural and built environment space as well. So and new committees. I wonder if we can move to page 74, which is the recommendations from the PAR. Sorry, Victoria. So page 74. Are you comfortable, Mr. Hope, with me jumping onto there? You weren't expecting someone else in the room.
Does the chair want to speak to?
Does the chair of PAR like to introduce it one? Welcome, Simon.
Sorry, I was just helping council. So if you could just repeat that, please.
So we're moving into onto the Treasury strategy, which is page 74. And as the independent chair, acting chair, we wondered if you want to basically introduce the topic.
I don't have anything specific to speak to on it because it's the standard Treasury policy that we've been taking through the previous PARs. So I guess I'm open for questions if there are any, but this is just a standard sort of presentation that we have each.
And Mr. Hope, did you want to introduce this?
No, nothing to add to what the chair said.
All right, so we'll start with questions if there is any councillors. It's obviously all been through the PAR committee this, so it's possibly just a level of comfort in this space. Right, if there's no questions, do I have anyone who is willing to move the recommendation? Moved by councillor Fowling, seconded by councillor McCone. Right, is there any debate on that at all? No one wants to speak? Right, well, I'll put that. All in favour, please say aye. And against? That's carried. And I think we're best just to break for lunch here, and we will be back from lunch at 1 p.m. So thank you very much. All right, we'll move. All right, welcome back, everybody. Now we're moving on to our submission for the simplifying local government proposal. I'll just find what page we're talking about on TAP. Page 55. Now, just so councillors know, the docs on TAP 1, there was one for us to have a look through to attach to this agenda that wasn't the updated one. There was just a bit of confusion on versions. But the one that I have circulated to you earlier, a couple of days ago via email, is the one we're discussing. So what I've done is I've printed off a copy, because there's been one emailed around today that still has all the track changes, so it just makes it a little bit tougher reading. So I thought I'd give you a clean version as well, so it's a little bit more obvious. But yeah, just to, I guess, run through, it's probably as easy as anything. I might start the conversation and then I'll pass to Mrs. Van Der Speek to add to it. So essentially, the government gave us 9 questions to answer around the proposal. So we've just worked through what the what our council's view of that is. Number 1, which is the need for simplifying local government. We are acknowledging that there is a need, that we need to find more cost-effective ways, but we still want to, through this process, find what the best version of local government looks like for Waitaki and, you know, across the country in these conversations. So just making sure we don't just jump to lines on the map like we've talked about, but we actually have a really good, robust process sitting in behind it. So we are saying that in number 2 there, essentially any meaningful reform of local government must begin with a clear definition of outcomes, and basically understanding as well that when we just have the cost driver in there, so look at the lower cost for everything, there is real trade-offs involved in that, and that can be those conversations we need to have with our community about the things that cost us money, but they may be important to our community. So we want to outline that it's really important we understand what they look like, and I think that's got to be through this process. Number 3, replacing regional councils with a CTB. Essentially where we landed on that was we believe there needs to be a focus for the CTB, and that needs to be on the regional reorganisation plan, and that trying to have a group of mayors govern their own councils and then manage the regional reorganisation plan and then also govern regional councils as a group is a distraction, and it's too much, and we think the focus needs to be on the regional reorganisation and our own councils. So we are staying silent on what that could look like, but just saying there's a skill set there and some knowledge that we don't want to be lost through this process, so that we understand what needs to be fed through into the regional reorganisation. What do we dislike about the proposal? I'm just trying to remind myself what we put in there. So looking for better outcomes for Otago and Canterbury, but we do have concerns about some of the practical implications, and that's talking again around the CTBs. And essentially, you know, while we're sitting on 2 CTBs, which we have said we're keen to do, so we keep the conversations alive, a recognition that one mayor sitting across 2 CTBs and 2 regional councils and their own council is a bit much. I'll put that lightly. So I think workload needs to be taken into account in that, and we want this to succeed. If we're going to do this for our communities, it needs to be done well. And so making sure we've actually got the space and the capacity to have these conversations and to have time to spend on the outcomes is going to take a whole lot of time. And so we just don't want to see things rushed, and we don't want to see things overloaded. We've also talked through the level of Crown participation, and what we said that there could potentially be a role, and it might be beneficial to have some understanding of the government sort of take on things, that we don't believe that they need to be controlling this process, and being very clear on that. And saying that, though, there could be an independent chair, we have said we are in support of that, because it probably does remove the parochialism from the chair capacity in the CTBs. So that's something we said we were open to. Onto the proportional vote around the CTB. So essentially, we believe the proportional vote's going to have implications, but then also to have sort of the one council, one vote is also going to have implications. So we think it needs to be a bit of a mixed model, recognising that, for instance, in Canterbury, if it was proportional vote, Canterbury or Christchurch City Council would decide everything, and that's probably not in the best interest of our community. But also, should we have the same level of vote of someone like Christchurch across the Canterbury region when we have such a small population that lives in that? So it's just going, maybe there needs to be a midpoint there that recognises that we all have a bit of skin in the game, but we probably need to find a midpoint. Then moving on to, I'll run through this, Councillor Hopkins, and then you have an ability to do things. It's just making sure everyone understands. So we'll move into questions after this. It's just letting you know, because I know that yeah, what you've had in front of you has been mixed at different times. So what do you dislike about the voting proposal for the CTB? And so we support effective representation. Do you support CTBs to develop a regional reorganisation plan? And essentially we are saying that yes, we do, and that we also think we have a unique voice in this conversation, being between Canterbury and Otago, and that we want to maintain that. And the criteria for assessing regional reorganisation plans, I think it needs a little bit of work still, a bit of strengthening, but yeah, we basically want to make sure that what we're doing is going to get the best outcomes for our communities. And what do we like or dislike about the ways communities crossing regional boundaries represented? We're not interested in having another mayor adopt a portion of our community through the CTBs. We are one of the unique councils and the only one on the South Island that is split between two regions. And we think it's really important that until a decision is landed on, that we maintain that representation for our community that voted us on. So we're being very clear on that. However, we are saying, recognising the time constraints, that at times it may need to be the mayor or someone appointed to represent the mayor, so that capacity-wise we can maintain a presence at these very important meetings, but there may be times that we just can't be everywhere all at once. And we've essentially said around the proposal for iwi Māori interests that it doesn't provide a lot of clarity, and that we do want to understand better how our partnership that we have with Ngāi Tahu is recognised through this conversation, and how we bring their voice into the mix. So based on that, and I get it's a lot in front of you right now, do we have any questions? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, I've had a couple. I know there's a reference right at the end there to communities and councils that straddle regional boundaries being represented by people elected to represent them and accountable to them, namely their mayor or the mayor's nominated representative. I'm just wondering if we share a view. My view is, and this is no reflection on the competence of any mayor, or it rather reflects the extraordinarily onerous nature of the job they have to do now. I wonder if we could have made more of the proposal that the CTB comprise mayors or the mayor's nominee, because there might well be people with very particular expertise who could contribute to this outcome, because I can't see how we're going to get regional strategic plans and all the rest of it while we're basically in the process of dismantling regional councils. The other
Yeah, I'm just going to, I'll answer that one first, and I've also missed going back to Victoria to step into things. Sorry, Victoria, that was my bad. So Councillor Hopkins, on that one, totally get your point, and that's why we have mentioned it and representative ourselves. We haven't done it all the way through because we do think there's a need for a bit of synergy, but I am happy to tease that out. I think also we've put in there that there may need to be, I can't remember exactly where we mentioned it, but then there may need to be different groups that come out of this to work on specific things. And I think that's where the conversations become broader and they take on the skill sets of councillors or staff members who have a bit of knowledge in that area. So I think we need a bit of clarity on the membership. So I think the clarity around the CTBs needs to be there as my personal view, but I'm happy to test the room on it. But the recognition that a lot of this work is going to then spin off, I would have thought, into different groups. We want to make that available. Alex.
Yeah, I just say, speaking from experience of running similar programs before, of looking at reorganising local governments, the CTB is likely to be the overall governance group that governs the processes. There will need to be subgroups and working groups to take forward the work practically that will involve other elected members and officers and other experts as well in order to draw up proposals. It's not feasible that you'd be able to do it all through the CTB itself. And if you think about just a region like Canterbury, which is so large and diverse, it's likely there'll need to be sub-regional groups and groups that are dealing with cross-border issues as well.
Well, I accept all
Councillor Hopkins, I'll just stop you there for a second. I will come back to your questions, but I'm going to throw to Victoria to open, and I'll come back to you. Sorry, Victoria.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think you've done a great job of introduction. Maybe just a couple of really high level sort of observations, themes across everything, as opposed to like breaking it down. So I think, like we're really emphasising these reforms and changes needs to be evidence led and not like predetermined structurally. So, so there's some flexibility there to work things out the way it's going to best suit our communities. So yeah, that was a really high level theme. And I think you've already touched on the fact that we want to achieve the best outcomes for our communities. And these are very high level policy proposals at the moment. There's no detail there. And there's a lot more to come from government. But also I think there's opportunities for smaller councils, especially and Waitaki, given it's really unique in terms of, straddling two regions and the only one in the South Island, as you mentioned, to really work through what's going to work best for us. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'll just pass to Alex to have a few comments, and then I'll go back to Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, just a bit of further framing for this is to remember that, there's a lot of discussion about what this looks like at the end of it. And I think that's premature. This is a consultation on the process to arrive at what local government looks like at the end of it. And so all the talk of lines on maps and which communities fit where and which responsibilities fit where is premature. And we need to make sure that, we work with the government to get the process right in the first place. And part of that is starting with the aim of the process. And so the government is concerned with in this with simplification and efficiency. And so you'll see in part of there, we're sort of challenging whether that is enough. And that speaks to what the Mayor was saying in the introduction, that it needs to go beyond that and looking at how can you get the best system of local government so that every community thrives and every local economy can grow in the country. And just simplifying and making it efficient isn't necessarily going to achieve that. And so really our response reflects that, but it's remembering that we need to focus on, is this the right process that's going to get the best result for Waitaki and every other community in terms of a better system of local government in the future that is affordable but delivers better outcomes as well.
Thank you, Mr. Harmley. So I'll throw back to you, Jim. I guess just on that first question around the CTB membership, it's whether or not you want me to test the room on some of these things as well.
Well, yes, that's my point. I'm not sure that the process proposed is going to simplify things. I was just wondering if other councillors shared my view that it might be appropriate to advocate for a complete autonomous discretion on the part of all the mayors to nominate alternative persons to the CTB should they see fit. The other question I had...
So I'll take that one first of all, and we'll socialise it. So at the moment, what we have got in our submission is that there can be a replacement chosen by the board, but it is recognised that it's still the mayor in that space. Do we want to submit as a council for that to be wider than that? Is there anyone that wants to support that change? No, we'll leave that be at the moment, but there is a recognition that there is some avenues in that for it to be changed out. So I'll get your mic back on and go to the next question.
Yeah,
Thank you.
a question I had with regard to the voting systems, I think the key thing is not one vote per council a la the CODC proposal, or indeed proportionality. Each of them are likely to end in tears, I would imagine. What I'm wondering is whether we should advocate for unanimity or a process whereby there can only be one dissenting voice or a proposition isn't carried. In other words, it seems to me it doesn't matter quite so much the basis on which the votes are allocated, but rather it seems to me we could perhaps be looking at something a bit like the Southern Waters Done Well model, where you have to have unanimity or something very close to it.
Well, even if it's just seeking a united voice, like I guess that's what we want, but if you want some move forward, I don't think that can be put into legislation because I don't think we get anywhere potentially. So maybe it's a seek unity in conversations, but there still probably needs to be a process so that there can be a way forward. Just Alex, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think whilst that aim would be admirable, I think if you start looking around, what the different options are, getting in each region, a unanimous decision on, what to recommend to the government is going to be very difficult. Because there will be different thoughts and different ideas and different options that could be considered that are going to be favoured more by some than others. And so I think putting that that bar in there, that it must be unanimous, I think is potentially setting them up that, they won't be able to succeed because they won't be able to achieve that across certain regions. And I think, even looking at Canterbury alone, it'd be very difficult knowing what, people are thinking about to achieve that bar at this stage.
Councillor Hopkins, Mark, please. Okay, Councillor McCone.
All in all, as Alex said, this is a submission document, but I think there's a lot here we've got to get, and I am quite touchy, I suppose, on number 6. I'm a great believer in one region, one vote, and where I'm coming from that, we are a split district, as someone said before, we're the only one in the South Island. So does that mean if that, whichever way we get pulled or pushed, does it mean we could have a representative in Geraldine that is representing our Canterbury part of it, and we could have a representative in Waimak and Wainak represent the other part, as opposed to what the district wants? So you have half our problem right now, half of the problems we're in is a population-based system where the urban people, and no disrespect to them, but they get the majority of the vote, as opposed to what is the provincial need, as opposed to a town need.
I think you're jumping to an outcome, and that's absolutely something that I share, that we don't want someone, Geraldine, not to take away anything from Geraldine, to be making a decision for us. And so that there's an outcome we're looking for as to what our councils or whatever the setup is one day looks like at the end of all this. This discussion's on the CTB, so it's on the groups of people that are going to be working on a reorganisation plan. And so this conversation is going to be had throughout a number of different districts, but we need to land on something. But I do think that when it comes to, where we land, that's a conversation that the government are open for us to suggest. And so I think that that's an outcome, and that's still to come, but we share your concern.
Look, I agree that could be an outcome. All I'm doing is outlining what it is, and which goes back to one person, one region, and one vote per region.
Okay, we'll tease this one out a bit further. I'm going to go to Councillor Cowles first. So we're talking, are you still talking about one council, one vote, or would you like to go on to a different subject, councillor Cowles? Okay, we'll go on to your comment first. Christian.
Yeah, similar to what you were saying, Mel, like we can't change the fact at the moment that we're split in our region. But, for me, the outcome is that we're not split at the end of it, how we achieve that. But I think by, obviously my ward's the one that sits up there in the Canterbury region, and we've got a number of really good people who want to put their hands up and feed into this. So the CTB might be what's driving that, but agree that we're going to have to set up a number of groups, and including our constituents and people that can, from a varied walk of life in the provinces, to ensure that we're getting that fed in. We've got to listen to our communities. The CTV is the way of feeding that back in. But yeah, there's a lot of work to be done within our regions and within our communities to ensure we're getting that voice loud and clear. So, yeah.
I think that's certainly the piece of work we need to do moving forward now is, how we run this process and how we involve wider voices in it. And I also think when it comes to the two kind of voices, we hold on to that one. But there was something I was going to on that, but I've lost it. But I think we had, Alex, were you keen to add to that?
I was just going to comment on the one region or one council, one vote. And I think, we need to look at that through other people's eyes. So if you're sat in Christchurch, essentially, 6 small councils, including ourselves, with probably, 20% of the population of Canterbury could block everything or agree things. And, is that right? Is that fair? Is that democratic? So I think that's why suggesting in here a hybrid model that, does take into account some sort of weighting, but doesn't mean that, very small population bases can, stop things happening or have their way. It's about a balance so that, it is democratic and fair, and all voices are able to be heard in that.
And I think, and that probably does remind me of what I was going to say, which is around that kind of CTB setup. And at the moment, while we're early in the conversation, it sits in a space where it needs to be the whole groupings. But you may find that if a year down the track, that it doesn't make sense for us to be in Christchurch City conversations on what their local government looks like. So I think there may need to be opportunities where we revisit how the CTBs are set up, but I'm reluctant to do that too early on the piece, because I think that moves us straight into the lines on the map conversation. So, we take your point, but I think that it's not fair or realistic that we would have the same level of vote as Canterbury in some of these. But I do think when it comes to what falls out of this one day around where our regions sit, the communities that are being directly affected, their vote on the CTB should count in that conversation. Back to you, Councillor McCarthy.
I would half buy with that as long as the proportion of financial cost is the same.
Well, at the moment, it's said that this will be funded through regional council funds, which is because it's not actually a decision yet of government that's going to have to be submitted on through their annual plans. There's a lot to discuss there, but the theory was this work should be just, covered by the regional council budgets, but there's obviously going to be spend for each individual councils in that as well. So take your point, that's probably a moving feast. Councillor Hopkins, then Councillor Fanini Titi.
I just note that we don't support one council, one vote. Under 6, we say, therefore, we support a weighted voting system that recognises population as a significant factor, while also incorporating adjustments for effective representation. My question is, can we actually develop an algorithm or a formula that would express what our preferred adjustments for effective representation are? The difficulty at the moment is we're saying we like something, but we're not saying exactly what it is that we like.
Well, I think that's a level of detail that we want to tell them what our outcomes we're trying to seek are, and then how that gets worked out can be something that comes. I think we could be here forever trying to argue over how that could look, but what we need to look at is the outcomes that we're looking for. Councillor Fanini to Iti.
Thank you. Yeah, I think when we're discussing the process of how to come up with a structure, it's really, really important because once you've got the structure set, that'll help align everything else. All of the smaller working groups, advisory groups will naturally fit under, like the main CTB board. I think in terms of what Councillor McCone and Councillor Hopkins are wanting us to express explicitly is around the rural, like kind of provincial needs versus the metro areas, and you can kind of wordsmith it in a way that, like is aligned with where they want us to land. But I think it is important to be quite specific, just from my perspective. There's no point in being wishy-washy about what we want to do in terms of the process. So I think we could do it in a way that ensures that our rural voice is heard and that we can still achieve what we need to within the process. Thank you.
So Councillors McCone, Hopkins, does kind of entering in a little bit on the rural and provincial needs versus metro needs, just highlighting that in there, will that go some way to addressing some of your concerns, recognising it's not everything, but it's just a midpoint?
No, that's acceptable. Like I said, it's a submission and we're showing intent. But I think, as you said, there's a lot of water going to the bridge, but we also want to be definitive on what we're actually expecting or where we're expecting to end up.
So we will look at adding, just highlighting a bit more on the rural provincial needs versus the metro needs that we may need to be looked at a little bit differently through the process. And I'm sorry, back to Hannah.
Thank you. The reason why I'm wanting us to be explicit about it is because of the government reforms that are coming down in terms of vocational education. It's around healthcare access. It's around a whole heap of things that would sit within the wider spatial kind of planning and accessibility for rural kind of areas. So it is more of a strategic kind of setting. And if we're going to be specific about the metrics of what we're going to include in this hybrid model approach, it's okay to just say it from my perspective.
No. Thank you, appreciate that. I'm just going to look a bit further before I go back to either of you to see if there's other comments and then I'll come back. So Councillor Lewis, did you have your hand up there?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Taberner. One of the areas that does slightly concern me is with regards to regional investment and having different parts competing against each other. And what's the sort of structure in place, or is there any framework in there to actually who gets the ultimate decision? Because if you get a louder voice on one of the parties within the region could miss out. And I think there needs to be some sort of form of safety net or safeguard in there. Because whilst it's good for the region as a whole, individuals within that could potentially benefit or miss out. So
I absolutely see where you're coming from, but when I look at the response in the submission, I guess that's detail to be worked through, and we're talking about wanting to get the best out of this for our own community. And I think that's probably where that's covered, because then when it goes to the kind of regional investment programs and that kind of thing, that's the details that's going to fall out of these conversations. And we need to work out how we organise ourselves in this conversation to provide the strongest footing for Waitaki through it. But I think through here, we've just got to be really clear on what outcomes we're looking for. And it is basically that Waitaki has a voice, that we are taking into account the rural and provincial needs that may look different to metros and that kind of thing. And I think that captures that, because I think that the regional investment conversation comes partway through the next level of talks. Councillor Cowles.
I know when this was sort of first released and Minister Meager sort of grouped a number of councils together, and since then there's been wider speculation and discussion that certain groupings might be a fait accompli. You've had obviously a lot of further discussions with ministers and around this. What's your gut feeling? Are they truly open to us shaping as much as we possibly can. And I'm not, it's not a leading question or a mistrust here. It's just the chat, and you've had the most interaction. I would be really interested, because I know that initial meeting for me, it was like, oh, okay, so we're grouped here, and we're grouped because they were sort of suggested by central government.
And James, I think himself, Minister Meager, I should put, has addressed himself saying that wasn't leading into any further conversations. It's a really good question, and I think when you have the conversations both at the regional level and at the national level, they all say, no, there's no plan. You guys need to tell us what you want, recognising that whatever the outcome of the CTB decisions are, need to go via the minister and be approved. There's bound to be different thoughts, and I know it doesn't matter who you talk to, everybody is jumping to lines on the map of what this means. Is it going to be coastal Otago, central Otago? Is it going to be an Aoraki council? Is it going to be, there's so many things out there that are being thrown up. And what we're trying to do through this is just say, hey, everyone's got a view, and there is certainly some ministers and MPs I've talked to along the way that I would assume have a view as what they think is good. But that's what we need to get away from, is everyone jumping to this is the right answer, because we need to get a better understanding of what is done across all the councils across the country. In the rural provincial, and I think that's where Hannah has hit the nail on the head, because what we might need here as rural and provincial New Zealand may look very different to what metros need. Here in Waitaki, we don't have many government services that actually operate out of our own space. And so whether or not we do have a role through things like Stronger Waitaki, through the work that Hannah does and so many other people, Arunaka does, and other people in our community, to try and plug those gaps and to bring services in that we wouldn't have otherwise. Does that sit in this local government conversation? That's something worth investigating. What does local government look like for us here? How can we best achieve something for our community? And does that look the same in other areas? And so is it more bespoke? So I think there is lots of opinions out there and lots of answers. And I hope we're trying to pull people away from the answers at the moment so we can have a more in-depth conversation. Councillor Hopkins.
Look, I share Hans' view about getting as specific as we can as soon as possible or whenever. I just make this point. I absolutely agree with Victoria's analysis as to the important underpinning principles, and that population has to be recognised as a significant factor. But the key thing is, irrespective of the size of the population of all of the councils, every council has an equal and equivalent interest in getting the best outcome. And really what we want is a voting system that most likely encourages all parties that will be achieved. And that's why I was wondering whether some amplification of the phrase incorporating adjustments for effective representation, in other words, being more specific, might help. Because if we're not going to have one vote per council, and we've said we don't want that, what specifically is going to be our preferred alternative?
I'm just going back to the paperwork here just to see exactly where that vote is covered off. I get what you're saying, Jim, and I guess that we absolutely, sorry, Councillor Hopkins, can move it to one vote per council as what we're requesting. I guess that we've got to ask ourselves whether or not that's a fair and reasonable way. And that's probably it's always going to be the friction we have. And when we're looking at regional organisation and being able to work with our neighbours, there is always going to be a friction for this would be the best for Waitaki, and this is the best for a regional representation that's giving everyone the fairest representation. And they're possibly not always the same, and that's going to be our dilemma the whole way through this conversation. So maybe it's highlighting that that's our dilemma, that for Waitaki, we want one vote, one council, but we also recognise that in the wish for fairness across the region, that may not be workable. Councillor McCone.
So it's just more of a comment to really, I'd really endorse what Hannah's saying. I think we've got to be specific and get up there and say it, even though it's a submission. And it's a bit like saying it's going to cost $100, but I reckon I can get it for 50. You've got to put it exactly what you want. You might not get it all, but make your voice heard. And the other part of that, to me, the way local government's been predicted, or the word that's coming through the system and the changes, this is part of a big, well, I suppose an octopus really. There's a whole lot of different things leading in, and the ball is still rolling, so we're not quite sure where it is. So if we've got to get this foundation out there now and get it, even though half it might get thrown out, the other half will stay there. One thing I have learned watching local government is once it's on paper, it's very hard to change a lot of stuff.
You're not wrong. So based on this conversation, I think we can make a stronger mention on the fact that rural and provincial New Zealand needs to be treated differently to metros. Are we comfortable with that? Is that kind of covering where you're talking there, Hannah? We can work on wordsmithing that. Do we want to put some recognition that one vote per council is our best outcome, but we recognise regionally that it's possibly not the fairest outcome? Or are we comfortable with our recommending the mixed model approach? Councillor Lewis.
Could we put some phraseology around that one vote per council where directly affected? Just thinking that if it's a rural or provincial matter, that is less relevant to urban areas. So potentially there could be a weighting kind of element to it. I don't know how you would actually phrase that, but.
And it's a valid point. And some of the conversations had around the Canterbury Mayoral Forum were that different votes are going to almost require different voting setups, because some things are going to make sense for just certain portions. Other ones, it's going to make sense for the overall look and affects everyone equally, when some things are very person-based or, you know, the cost-based, that kind of thing, that probably have that different level of representation. It's really hard to know how to feed that into a submission. Just looking to you, Victoria, whether you've got any suggestions in that space.
Just on that, like it's almost like you're talking about an issue by issue, that consideration of which way you go there in terms of that. Yeah, it's really difficult to craft, isn't it? To create some sort of consistency. I mean, we could express that, you know, as opposed to, you know, that idea.
Or it could just be that some topics may require an individualized approach to voting. Is everyone comfortable with adding that in there, so that recognizing that if they're talking about something that's happening just in Central City, Christchurch, around buses, that there's not much point me sitting at the table having a vote, for instance. Okay. Right, do we have any other questions or comments? Councillor McCone.
Just like to thank all those involved for the amount of time and effort they've got this far.
A massive thank you to Victoria for all the work in that space. Appreciate it. So I'm going to move from the chair that minute I'll get back to what's actually on our screen, shall I? So approves council submission on the simplifying local government proposal with amendments to submit to the Department of Internal Affairs on 20th of February 2026. Victoria, do you think we need to mention that it is the one that's been circulated with track changes? Or do we need to clarify?
I'll clarify that.
Cool, thank you.
Given there are amendments, I suggest that there, as part of the resolution, that you delegate authority to the mayor to agree the final changes in line with the discussion.
Right. Everyone comfortable with that? Right, so I'll move that from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Seconder, councillor McCone. Right, any other comments, councillors? Right, I'll put that all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
And against? That's carried, and thank you everyone for feeding into this process, it's appreciated. Now, on something that's no less massive, but I'm probably not as across as other members of our council are. We'll move on to page 60. And again, this is going to be an attachment for the actual submission, which is sitting on our docs on tap. And who am I looking to first for this conversation? I'll start with Roger and David to launch into it, and then I might actually throw to Sven if you want to just add a few points after that.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to hand straight to David and Victoria because they've done a lot of the work on this. Whilst, like a few of us, I spent most of January reading the bills. David and Victoria have probably read them multiple times and have been involved in many of the conversations with other agencies around them. So they've got the best technical knowledge.
So just for anyone watching at home, this is on the submissions for the planning bill and the natural environment bill. So I'll pass over to you, David and Victoria.
Thank you, Mayor Timino. Yeah, I'd really like to thank the team of both staff and elected members who have put this together. It was quite a monumental piece of work because there were two bills. I think there was well over 700 pages to wade through. The bills didn't even sort of directly talk to each other particularly well, so it made it quite hard. But we got there. So probably the key thing is having a look on pages 61 and 62, just as a brief overview. This is quite a sort of flip around of the current system we have, and they talk about the upside down cone on page 62, and it's government being more directive. So the bills, which will turn into acts if passed, will set the framework. They're a bit less outcome focused than the RMA, and a lot of the outcomes will come through the national direction that's coming through. There was quite a raft that came in January this year, about 10 national direction, either changes or new pieces, and there's more to come as this unfolds. So we're kind of at that almost end point of this reform, but with future national direction, there'll be more kind of refinement as we get towards the end. What it then means is our plans will form part of a sort of regional combined plan that will give effect to a regional spatial plan. In our case, two, one for Otago, one for Canterbury. And that work, it's set out on page 63. There's a timeline there of when it all happens. Key to our submission and most others was that this time frame is pretty quick and possibly unrealistic. So we have submitted on that aspect. And I guess the submission sort of breaks into two parts. One is around the detail about what could be changed to make it a bit more workable. Other aspects cover off what we have problems with in the two bills, and tries to sort of seek refinement or pushback on some of that, or where we support it as well. There was quite an iterative process with elected members going back and forth on some of the comments, and I think we got there in the end on where we landed with our submission, so I won't go into detail on that, but really sort of happy to answer any more questions if there are any. I mean, the submission has already been lodged as of last Friday.
Yeah, I was going to say this is retrospective.
It is retrospective, but I think, yeah, the work done right across the team, testament to sort of getting it done on time, but the process allowed for that back and forth iteration of comments and feedback. So, and that worked reasonably well on the timeframe we had.
Councillor Salmon.
Oh, I agree. It was a good process, and thank you, Victoria and David. It was a massive job, and a lot of the technical points about how the bills don't currently work that well together are all really good points, and also thanks to Franz and Jim put a lot of time into the comments too. I think we've got a pretty good submission, which balances a lot of the sort of where things should or shouldn't be controlled under the bills. And yeah, no, I think we've ended up in a really good place.
Yeah, I think having these bills dropped on us just before Christmas break, and I think those both staff and elected members that have spent a huge amount of time wading through a lot of information to get us this point. So this is when the teamwork thing really does work, because there's just so much going on at the moment that it's really great to see people picking up the ball and running with it and bringing our thoughts forward. So really, really appreciate the time spent on that. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just basically also want to say that it's been absolutely fantastic how much work you guys have put in, how much work spent. I want to acknowledge that. And I also want to say it's just a really good example how elected members and officers have worked together on an issue. And it's not a small issue, it's a bloody big issue. And I'm really happy with the outcome. Everybody worked together, and I thank you all for that.
So noting that it is retrospective, I will take questions or comments from Councillor Hopkins and Councillor McCone.
Yeah, I endorse those. Just for the record, I've also made a submission to the National Environment and Planning Bills as a private individual, reflecting many of the matters raised in our own submission here. David, I was interested to see after you circulated this, Dunedin saying they're very concerned about the complete disappearance of retail zones. Now, is that correct? And if so, how seriously do you view that?
Thank you, Councillor Hopkins. It's kind of caught up in the discussion around what's not considered in terms of effects. I remember in your commentary you talked about the big box retail, which we've covered. So basically saying you cannot consider retail distribution effects any longer, which means you can end up with kind of out of CBD, big box retail, or even retail standalone, which can then compromise your CBD, which is problematic for the smaller sort of provincial towns, more so like sort of us, Ashburton, Timaru, where some of that's happening. We're lucky in that our proposed plan has a very limited big box retail area out where sort of Mitre 10, the Looming is already. So it's pretty much full at the moment. And we're very strong on not promoting retail out in the north end to suck business out of town. So we'd be concerned if that was to happen, and we have submitted on that point, similar to Dunedin and others.
Use your mic, please.
This is quite important to me because I've seen towns, provincial towns in the North Island and elsewhere, I've seen these CBDs destroyed by boundary explosions of big box retailing. We deliberately set up the industrial zone at the north end so that it wasn't to enable that activity. If these acts are passed, won't we be subject to challenge by developers and possibly have people like the Environment Court and others say you can't stop them?
Yes, so if the bill passes unchanged, then that isn't a possibility. So that's why we have submitted on it and others. So hopefully that weight of submissions can influence those changes in the bill. But if it doesn't change, we'll be stuck with that.
Councillor McCone.
Yeah, look, I'd like to second what Fran said. The amount of work and everything that's gone into this, considering what's going on, has been huge. And while I might not necessarily agree with it all, I think it's been a very good, thorough submission. And this is a submission, and I'd like to thank everybody involved. And if Sven's happy with that, I'd like to move that in retrospect that we adopt.
Right, that's moved by Councillor McCone. I'm probably looking to Councillor Thowning for a second. So I've got a seconding by Councillor Thowning. And so if there's no more discussion, councillors, we'll put that. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? That's carried. And just again, thank you for the fair volume of work involved there. We appreciate it. All right, so now we move on to terms of reference for committees, and we're on page 66 on this one. Now, we will, I'm not sure if you want to. No worries at all. So essentially the idea behind this is to get us up and running. There may still be some hiccups and things to work through. There is an ability in this meeting to change anything because the terms of reference are just a great starting point so we can stand these committees up and I guess share some of the workload and actually just get a few more specialists down in the into the conversations that need to happen and just save the really strategic high level stuff to the council. And I think with so much moving and going on at the moment, to have some of those committees operating will be helpful. Probably one thing to draw your attention to, and that's in number 3 around the Oamaru committee. It was raised by Councillor McCone as whether or not that should involve the airport, which was my original intention, but I recognise that it sits out of the Oamaru area and has it sits in the Corridale area, and it could sit within the infrastructure space. The planning part of it could sit within the strategy space. So it's something that we could look at removing from that committee if that was the wish of the team. Based on that, I guess I'll just take any questions. Yeah, no question. I can't, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Thanks. Thank you. There was some discussion previously about, I guess, an opportunity to have a review of these. Are we best to set sort of a timeline for that here, or has that sort of been discussed in terms of when that actually will be looked at?
I think Councillor Schlack sort of floated the idea originally and we talked in about a year, so sort of this time in a year's time. I'm quite happy for it to put it on there so it becomes part of our work program so that we can revisit and make sure the way it's operating works. Mr. Palmer.
Yeah, I'd suggest put it on the work plan for a year, but I think if there are things that clearly need changing, then, that aren't working or could be improved, then we don't just wait for that year to be up, we address them. But I think we need to give the new committees a few cycles to bed in and, for chairs to discuss how they're working and tweak things. And then if there's things that need to change in the terms of reference, we do it earlier than the year if necessary.
Absolutely. Okay, so are you comfortable with that, Deputy Mayor Ryan? So I'll move on to Councillor Hopkins and Councillor Schlack.
Just a point of clarification. We had a workshop the other day, and I just want to reassure myself that I'm correct in thinking that we actually discussed and modified the drafts for the Assets and Infrastructure Committee, and whether we did it completely also in part the Strategy and Advocacy Committee. Is that correct?
There were changes made from our workshop that we had, and hopefully it's all captured in here. And so if there's anything that's not captured in here, now would be the time to raise it. But like we said, we will also be able to make changes in the future if things aren't working. Councillor Schlack.
Thank you. Now, I basically wanted to reflect on what Mr. Palmley said, because things are moving so fast and things are changing so quickly. You wouldn't know what's going to hit you out of left field. So, yeah, I have the option there that if things do change that have to be addressed, that we've got that opportunity in those terms of reference. So we should leave them in there as well.
Councillor Cowles.
Thanks. I was just a couple of things I just wanted to bring up about that the airport thing. Have we decided where that's going to sit? Because, I mean, I don't know. In my mind, it's a big piece of infrastructure in my mind, but and it's something that can benefit all of the region, not just Oamaru. So, I mean, that's a key thing for me. And what we've heard today is that around assets and infrastructure, it's going to need some attention. So, from that view. The other thing I'd be supportive of.
Stop you there, we'll cover that first. So I guess I'm suggesting assets and infrastructure where that sits best. Is that something that most people are feeling comfortable about?
Just insofar as the airport plan, the master plan, where would that kind of, the strategic kind of overview sit versus the actual infrastructure piece?
And I think that some of the discussions that we had in our workshop around things like if you're doing work on the Wamaru Wharf, for instance, the actual infrastructure part of that project sits in the accident infrastructure. When it comes to the planning, overall planning for Wamaru Harbour area, that kind of thing, that's more in the strategic planning space, which is your committee. And so maybe it's the same within the airport, that the airport strategy as to what we're trying to achieve, that could sit in the strategy area, but any spend around the infrastructure and following those projects and making sure they're on target and doing what they should be doing sits in the assets and infrastructure space. Is that reasonable and clear?
Thank you, through the chair, just acknowledging that there will be some interface across the different committees. And I think it's just good just to test it as we go along and like what our CEO had mentioned.
And the intention is to bring the chairs together and we can have a bit of a planning one before meetings as well. So if there's a bit of question, we can clarify that. Back to you, Councillor Cowles.
I think this kind of pretty much dovetails well into that as well. You know, I think the intent of these committees needs to be relatively clear as well for me. You know, we could end up creating a whole lot more work across all work streams. And, you know, there's got to be that level of trust that these committees are going to do the homework and almost do the workshopping on these things and then bring a really good solid decision to council, unless it's something particularly big that we need to be across of all of us. If we try to be across everything, all of us, with what's going on, we're going to have a real issue. So, you know, I'd like to hope that as a team, we can agree that our committees can work together to deliver something really good to the whole of council, without having to, all of us have to jump through the same hoops. So
I think you're absolutely right, and it shares that load a wee bit, but also just keeping in mind throughout that whole process that our committees need to be working to the same strategic priorities that council have set, because we can't have council saying this is where our priorities lie and we've got a huge amount of work to do and this is where we want staff to spend their time, and then have committees going off saying, oh, but while we're here. So, you know, it's going to need to be an ongoing conversation and probably a bit of challenge along the way, but I think that that's a healthy conversation.
and I'm wondering if, you know, like when we have our updates and our meetings and stuff, that this is a bit of a structured thing, just a quick verbal update from those, you know, in a more informal setting as well, so that we can test the waters that we're heading in the right direction. I think that's, you know, communication is going to be key.
Absolutely. Now I had Councillor Hopkins.
Yes, one concern I have about the Strategy and Advocacy Committee as its terms of reference apply at the moment. I remain anxious that the purpose sentence actually gives the committee a power that I believe should sit with the council. I believe the council must provide strategic direction, policy oversight and advocacy leadership, but I believe the committee can propose strategic direction, policy oversight and advocacy leadership. And if the word provide was changed to propose, it would still fit perfectly with the objectives as set out and the scope of activity. So I would urge colleagues to support that very small change.
For me, that seems like a reasonable change. Just looking around, is everyone happy for changing provide to propose? Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense because it does fit with what is in the remit of the committee further on. So it only has the power to recommend the adoption and review of strategic documents. It doesn't have the power to agree it. So I think that would clarify its role in that sense.
Okay, so we'll make that change. Was there anyone else that wanted to speak? Councillor McCone.
Sorry, again, it's on the Oamaru committee one. I just wonder if we shouldn't, the quorum is 6 members, including 4 councillors. All the other 2 have a deputy or a chair as one of those 4. And I just wonder if we shouldn't include that, so we're at least totally transparent.
Definitely have. So The reason for the change, and so you're saying, first of all, the quorum needs to involve, you're saying both the deputy and chair or
No,
either-
just
just
either
one?
or, and it must be one of your four councils.
Okay,
Yeah.
so one of the four councils, and obviously the idea around there being more elected members in the quorum space was to make sure that, you know, decisions were still reflecting council's will.
Yeah.
Cool. Have you got that down, Arlene? Yes. Is everyone else comfortable with that change? Perfect.
So just clarifying that the quorum would be 6 members, including 4 councillors, brackets, one of whom must be either the chair or the deputy chair.
Yes.
Councillor Hopkins.
Since we're on the Oamaru committee, I am concerned that first of all, some of the funding for activities in Oamaru comes from areas outside Oamaru. So for that reason, I'm not sure the committee should have absolute decision-making powers. I'm also troubled because I think the way it's worded gives them almost too much influence or ability. And I would like to see under objectives to oversee agreed local projects and initiatives. Under scope of activity, I would like the word operational matters related to be added to 1, 2, 3, and 4, unless we agree with Brent that the airport and harbour better off with assets. And
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand that. So can you just repeat that point? Because I'm not very clear on what you're trying to do. With
well, I just want to constrain the committee in the sense that I don't think it should have quite as wide reaching powers as these objectives and scope of activity allow. I mean, matters related to the library. Will the committee be able to decide when it opens, when it closes, what the charges are for books and so on? I mean, the way it's worded, I just think it's either unduly loose or unduly permissive. And
if I just stop you for a second, so going back to your point and around the oversee agreed local projects, I think that actually will then cover off, because anything looking at like, are we looking at a project at the library, which I don't, you know, that kind of thing isn't on our plan at the moment, because timeframes, we are trying to keep what our work program looks like really tight. So if it's an agreed local project, then you're not going to have the committee running off on areas that other councillors aren't aware of. It's been a project that they've said, hey, this is something we agree with, and then they pass it on to the Oamaru committee for the finer details to be worked through. And it just means that we're not all having to sit across all detail all the time. It's a bit of trust in there too. But the agreed, I think if you put that agreed in there for around the local projects and initiatives within Oamaru, that does cover off some of your concerns.
yeah. Okay. Just going back then to the other, is it the view, do other members share my concern that under scope of activity, if you look at 1, 2, 3, certainly picking up on Brent's point, whether we allocate the airport and harbour, or to which committee do we allocate those to, or do we allocate elements of each to both committees based on their modus operandi?
I'll probably up there for a second, because we have just discussed the Oamaru airports. We're taking that out of the scope for the Oamaru committee, and that's going to not be named per se, but the stuff that pertains to the infrastructure side of that will go into the infrastructure committee, and the strategic side of that will go into the strategy committee. The Oamaru Harbour, so the strategy side of any work that's done, so Oamaru Harbour plan or that kind of thing, would feed through, and it would probably work with the Harness Committee. It would feed through into this committee because I think it absolutely sits there. But if there's any discussion on, say, infrastructure in the Oamaru Harbour and spend and how projects are going, that's tracked through the Infrastructure Committee.
Okay. Well, again, I'm sorry, do we have any anxiety that a sentence like matters relating to Oamaru Council services, including the library, aquatic centre, gallery and museum, is too broad? Does that imply that this committee can set the hours, can set charges, can make all manner of other decisions, or are those matters that the council would wish to reserve for itself?
I think you're talking about activity rather than decision making. And so it's around the work that's done in that space. And we still, like we mentioned, that agreed part of that means they're not running off in every direction.
Right.
It is direction setting. And I think that, you know, we can wordsmith this to death, but we need to give it a test run and see how it's going and be open with how it's going and how it's not going. But I don't think that changing the scope of activity when it's basically saying things that happen in Oamaru, this is a committee that's going to come to for discussion, and I think that's going to empower them a bit like you've got your community boards to actually get councillors involved in that kind of on the ground discussion.
Well, Madam Chair, my other concern, if you allow, I'd like to canvass other people's views on this. I did email people in January. Historically, committees have been able to appoint their own independent members. And I believe this committee should be able to do that as well, rather than have them appointed for it. And I unfortunately consider that the proposed independent members at the moment have an excessive emphasis on the Harbour Committee. Indeed, they're all on the current Harbour Committee with the exception of the unnamed representative from the business district. And I believe the committee should be able to actually appoint its own independent members once it's worked out what its priorities are and once it's worked out what its major areas of interest are as well. So I personally would not support appointing those particular independent members at the outset of the committee's existence.
So I guess a couple of things, and I can certainly test the meeting on that. First of all, we have voted to appoint them already. That conversation's happened in an earlier council meeting. People like George Coucher, he sits a lot wider than the harbour area. The harbour area committee is no longer a committee. So it's basically bringing some of that knowledge through and some of that skill set, but then recognising that while one of those members is a lot wider, the other two are a little bit more harbour focused. And so then bringing on an extra person that's not harbour focused per se, and that's something that I'll work with the chair on. We certainly have just suggested members in the past and put that in front of council, which is what I've done. And I recognise that there's a lot of ways we could do this, and I'll certainly take the mood of the room, but it's you could sit around forever and would certainly have to do it in a public excluded space to discuss members that go on a committee. And I'm very mindful of the size of the committee, and I feel like we've got a good coverage of knowledge, and I went for sort of that skill set space. And I think there's a conversation around the next member still to be appointed that I think the chair has a role in. But I guess is Councillor Hopkins' concern, is that mirrored by others? Deputy Ryan.
Thank you. I do share some of Councillor Hopkins' concerns, but perhaps maybe that's something that we look at in a review down the track. Just and like I think you're right, Councillor Hopkins, when you're talking about the strategic goals of the committee and having that reflected in the membership. You know, when I saw the Oamaru Business District, I sort of started thinking about, you know, whether we should be thinking more about like social outcomes, or, you know, what is the purpose of this committee? What are our priorities? And so, and perhaps down the track we do, think about reflecting that. But I mean, I'm comfortable in the meantime, but I think maybe that is part of a discussion down the track.
So so potentially, in a year's time, when that's there, it's also revisiting the potential external membership on those committees. Mr. Hartley.
Yeah, I was just going to try and offer a pragmatic view. We're trying to get these committees started and see if they start from somewhere. And maybe the balance is that, the Omru committee can think about, who might be suitable to be representing different parts of the community on there and make recommendations to council that way if they think the membership should change so that it has some say in the shape of that. But council gets an overview of who is involved where in the council business and sat round tables making decisions.
In that case, could be changed terms of reference on 73 to will be reviewed every year.
We're going to do that in the overall recommendation. Councillor McCone.
Yeah, look, again, I take on Jim's thing, but also take your point on that we need continuity, and the way to start with continuity are those that have been there to start with, and that will change. So the processes here, we can change that further down the track if it needs to be. And don't forget, councillors change every 3 years as well. So you need to have some continuity through the system. And on that, it sounds terrible, well, it's not supposed to be, but you've got to actually have a crack at something rather than worry about what's going to happen. So I would like to move, if it's okay with you, Matt, that we stand these up and get going with it.
All right, so are you moving? I'll go back to the recommendation. They're the top dots, and we'll go 1, 2, and 3, and then add number 4 saying that the committee's terms of reference and external membership is reviewed in 12 months for number 4.
Yep.
Did you?
I've lost my page, but also
Where are the recommendations? I can't find them. Oh, I've got it, yeah.
someone that's subject to agreed amendments too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we adopt the attached terms of reference with amendments for et cetera, yeah.
And then, number 4, just stating the review of terms of reference and membership in 12 months or before if required. It's probably or deemed necessary.
What is required.
Mr. Neil.
Sorry, Mayor Taylor, the first time you mentioned that number 4, you explicitly said external membership, and then the second time you said membership full stop. I just wanted to
External member.
So
I guess
why not members full stop?
Membership should probably be on there, and that way if the makeup of our committees isn't quite right, it's a first ditch effort, we can revisit that too.
Yep. That was going to be mine.
No, thank you, Mr. Neil. Are you comfortable with that, Mr. Councillor McCone?
Yep.
Right, we've got a mover. Did I have a seconder? Councillor Lewis. Right, any other discussion on that, councillors? Deputy Mayor Ryan.
Thank you. No, I just I guess a comment that I am I'm happy with, comfortable with where we've landed today, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can achieve with these committees, especially excited about the strategy and advocacy space. So.
And I guess from my point of view, thank you for being open to this, because I seen there was some issues, different councils, and I've sort of picked out where I see some of our teething issues at council and thought there's some really good opportunities to flesh them out. And I've spoken probably to each of you from early on about the strategy and advocacy space. I want us to have a much more planned out approach to that, so that we know what's coming up when. We also know what we're trying to achieve in the advocacy space, and we have a bit of a plan around it. We get the right people in the room, and I think that was my intention at the start of the term, and it's only become more important the more government's thrown at us. So I think that this is a really strong position to be in, and we've got some really good leaders stepping into these spaces as well. I think the ability to grow leadership in our chairing capacity is also a bit of a bonus that comes out of this. So let's give it a go, and we'll take feedback. So I'll put that. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you for that, councillors. And now we move on. Yes, resolution to exclude the public. So that's moved by Deputy Mayor Ryan and seconded by Councillor Linwood. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? Carried.
You need to take a vote on that.